Alors, bon après-midi. Mon nom est Rebecca Spence, attachée de presse à la Banque du Canada, et je modérerai cette conférence de presse. Le gouverneur Tiff Macklem va répondre aux questions pendant environ une vingtaine de minutes. Avant de poser votre question, prière de vous identifier. Et pour les gens dans la salle, je vous demanderai également d'utiliser le micro pour qu'on puisse vous entendre dans la web diffusion. Libre à vous de poser vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Before asking your question, please state your name and affiliation. We are webcasting this press conference, so please use the wireless microphone, which my colleague will bring to you. The governor will be happy to answer questions for about 20 minutes in both official languages. We also have journalists participating remotely today, so we'll do one question in the room first, une question de chaque organisation dans la salle, and then turn to the call to try to make sure every media outlet gets a chance to ask a question. On va commencer dans la salle avec Mme Barry.
Bonjour, M. Macklem.
Bonjour, Hélène.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui.
J'ai envie de vous demander, au cours des dernières années, on a vu les banques centrales de tous les pays augmenter considérablement leurs réserves en or pour compenser les fluctuations des devises. Au Canada, on est un des rares pays qui n'en a pas de réserve d'or. Est-ce que vous pensez que ce serait une bonne idée d'en avoir?
Nous sommes contents avec nos réserves. Les réserves sont les réserves du gouvernement. Nous, à la Banque du Canada, nous gérons les réserves pour le gouvernement du Canada. Et nous avons nos réserves dans les obligations des grandes devises plus grands et dollars américains, euros, Japon. Nous pensons que nous sommes bien servis avec nos réserves.
Même si on est une exception?
Oui, nous sommes une exception, mais nous n'avons pas un plan. C'est vraiment les plans du gouvernement. Mais moi, je ne suis pas au courant de plan de l'échanger.
Okay. On passe maintenant à M. Desrosiers.
Bonjour, M. Macklem. Éric Desrosiers du Devoir. Parlant de la monnaie numérique, bon, vous dites pour le moment, il n'y a pas d'appétit de la part des élus d'aller de l'avant pour des stablecoins de la Banque du Canada. Je pense qu'il y a, je me trompe, ou d'autres banques centrales, elles, se sont avancées là-dessus. Et sous question, quand vous dites qu'il n'y a pas d'intérêt de la part des gouvernements, sentez-vous de la part des consommateurs, de la part des entreprises, le souhait qu'on aille plus vite de ce côté-là au Canada?
Oui, comme pour les autres banques centrales, c'est surtout la Banque centrale européenne qui ont un plan pour émettre une monnaie numérique, banque centrale. Les autres grandes banques centrales, je n'ai pas vu. Bon, il y a quelques-uns, Brésil, l'Inde ont déjà des monnaies numériques, banque centrale, mais les États-Unis non. Donc, on verra. En termes de demande, nous avons fait des sondages des Canadiens et franchement, il y a une diversité d'opinions. Oui, il y en a eux qui veulent. Il y a beaucoup d'autres qui ne sont pas très intéressés et il y a quelques-uns qui ne veulent vraiment pas. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on voit? Comme tu as mentionné, ce n'est pas à nous de décider, c'est à les élus de décider, mais on ne voit pas à ce moment une forte demande des Canadiens ou des entreprises.
On passe maintenant à Mme Jobin de TVA.
Jobin pour TVA Nouvelle. J'aimerais parler de la valeur du dollar canadien. À quoi on pourrait s'attendre en 2026? Est-ce que le dollar canadien pourrait être bonifié? Est-ce que le Canada pourrait regagner un peu de pouvoir avec son dollar? Est-ce que vous avez étudié là-dessus?
Vous n'êtes pas très content avec mon réponse. On donne pas vraiment des prévisions du dollar canadien. C'est déterminé dans le marché. Quand on fait nos prévisions, on fait l'hypothèse que le dollar canadien va rester où c'est. Donc, par exemple, nous avons fait, mon dernière prévision était en octobre et l'hypothèse pour le dollar canadien, c'est que ça va rester à 72 sous américains. Et ça, c'est à peu près là maintenant. Donc, oui, vous avez raison que les changements économiques, les changements de confiance peuvent affecter le dollar canadien. Qu'est-ce qu'on a vu durant les périodes récentes, c'est que en regardant le dollar canadien, c'est souvent les mouvements dans le dollar américain qui bougent nos taux d'échange plus que le mouvement vraiment dans le dollar canadien. Donc, il y a une dépréciation du dollar américain cette année et ça a monté un peu le dollar canadien vis-à-vis le dollar américain. Mais franchement, le mouvement n'est pas très grand pour le dollar canadien.
C'est quand on pourrait être avantagé le Canada, on ne sait pas.
Nos taux d'échange vont refléter les développements en Canada et aux États-Unis. Donc, quand le taux d'échange bouge, il y a toujours les gagnants et ceux qui perdent. Un taux d'échange pour les exportateurs, c'est mieux, ils sont plus concurrentiels, mais si vous achetez des choses des autres pays, ils sont plus chers. Donc, il y a deux côtés.
On passe maintenant à Eric.
Hey, Eric Hertzberg with Bloomberg. After the last renewal in 2021, the bank and government added a maximum sustainable employment clause to the framework. Just wanted to know if that's under review this time around, and can you share whether your thoughts have changed about whether it should be specifically outlined in the bank's mandate?
Well, first of all, I would not explain it the way you explained the last renewal. What I would say, and this is what I said, I remember is what I said at the press conference, I think the last renewal was really reflected continuity and clarity. I don't think there was a significant change. I think the renewal reflected in clearer terms what we've been doing for many years, and I think you've seen the whole time I've been governor. I've been doing my very best to be as clear as we can be, and I think the renewal is very clear. It states very clearly that our primary objective is price stability. It does also say that we will work to support maximum sustainable employment, but it's not directly observable, and at the end of the day, we have an inflation target, and it's critical that we keep inflation expectations well anchored, because one thing we know for sure is if we don't do that, nothing in the economy is going to work well. And that has certainly been our focus. I don't need to remind everybody inflation was a little over 8% in 2022. We raised rates very forcefully, and an important reason we did that was to keep inflation expectations well anchored. That worked, and that allowed us to get inflation back down without causing a recession, without causing a big increase in unemployment. So, yeah, to go back to the last agreement, I really think we were trying, and what we did do is provide a clearer statement of what we've been doing. The thing that did change was consistent with that clarity. We committed to providing more information on the labor market. And you've seen that on our website. We have a whole dashboard. We look at a broad range of labor market indicators to give a sense of the overall health of the labor market. You can't summarize the labor market in a single number like unemployment. You've got to look at employment rates, participation rates. You need to look at different segments of the labor market, and that was the goal. You've also seen that once a year I give a speech really looking at the health of the labor market. It obviously is an important input into our monetary policy decisions, and that's really what the renewal reflected, and I don't think that's going to change.
We'll go next to Greg Quinn of Market News.
le chef du Parti québécois disant que la Banque du Canada, c'est mal pour l'économie du Québec et il veut quitter le dollar canadien et créer une banque centrale plus propre. Avait-il raison?
Je vais laisser les commentaires politiques pour les politiciens. Moi, je pense que les Canadiens sont bien servis par la Banque du Canada.
On va passer maintenant à la ligne téléphonique. We'll go to the call now. I just want to remind people on the call to mute their line if they're not asking a question. We'll go first to Promit of Reuters, then Max of Mace News, followed by Craig of Canadian Press. So go ahead, Promit.
Thank you. Hi, Governor.
Hi, Promit.
Thank you for taking our questions. Hi. I want to draw your attention to yesterday's inflation numbers. The headline inflation cooled and even the core measures cooled. But food inflation went up, and food inflation has this habit of increasing inflation expectations. How concerned you are that because of persistent rise in food inflation, inflation expectations could be de-anchored?
Well, thank you for the question, and don't worry, Pramit. I'm very focused on inflation. My attention that is certainly job one. So, what did we see in yesterday's inflation numbers? I mean, inflation, didn't change. It came out at 2.2, same as the previous month. As you indicated, food price inflation was up, and in fact, we've seen it move up the last few months. That appears to reflect a few things. We've seen bad weather has resulted in poor harvests in a number of countries. That's affecting food prices around the world. In the case of some goods, U.S. tariffs are having an impact. For example, coffee. A lot of coffee beans get imported to the United States, roasted and made into coffee that's then exported. So, that's an example of, even though we don't have tariffs on coffee from other countries, the fact that the U.S. does have an impact on us. And we've also seen some increases in shipping costs. Going forward, we are seeing some attenuation, some easing of those pressures. So our expectation is, I'm not predicting sort of next month, but over the next, number of months, we are expecting to see some easing of food price inflation. But, I'd say two things. One is, that's not going to be in every component. Beef prices, for example, are very high because ranchers reduce the size of their herds. That's not going to change quickly. So look, if you're a family that's already having difficulty putting food on the table, the fact that food price inflation might come down, that's not the same thing as food prices coming down, is probably cold comfort. So, yes, I think food price inflation is going to be on the minds of many Canadians. I will say, monetary policy, our job, we don't target specific prices. We don't try to control certain specific prices. They are determined in the market. Our job is to keep overall inflation close to the target. And overall inflation has been close to the target for more than a year now. And we are very focused on keeping it there.
We'll go next to Max.
Hi, good afternoon, Governor. My question is, it's about the Institute for Supply Management in the United States. They released a semi-annual outlook report this morning, and both chairs of manufacturing services said they were surprised to see companies a lot more optimistic about the revenues in 2026 than expected. And the analysis is that probably because those firms have controlled raw materials and labor costs fairly well, and also that people are getting tired of being pushed around by the U.S. trade policy and do something. So I understand Canada has to transform its economic and business structures, as you mentioned, but do better profits on growth and inflation in the United States still help the Canadian economy?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last part of your question again? I was having trouble hearing it on the line.
Okay, so do better prospects on growth and inflation in the United States still help the Canadian economy?
Okay, yes. Well, I haven't read this latest supply management report that you're citing. But yes, clearly if the U.S. economy is stronger, that tends to create more demand for our exports. Now, U.S. tariffs on a number of key sectors are greatly complicating that, and those sectors remain are very hard hit. Beyond the targeted sectors, auto, steel, aluminum, wood, most of the rest of the economy continues to trade tariff-free with the United States, providing it's CUSMA compliant. So, yeah, look, a stronger United States tends to strengthen demand for our exports. Obviously the flip side of that is a weaker United States. We'll see weaker demand for our exports, and that's an important reason why we do forecast the U.S. economy, and that's an important input into our Canadian outlook.
Go ahead, Craig.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking our questions. You just mentioned CUSMA compliance there, which segues well into my question. I'm wondering how big a risk the 2026 renegotiation of CUSMA is to our 2026 economy if that exemption is potentially something that could be affected by those renegotiations.
Well, I don't have any sort of inside insight into where those negotiations are, and I'm not going to handicap it. What I can tell you is certainly when you talk to businesses, what happens with the Canada, U.S., Mexico trade agreement is certainly on their mind. And if you look at the Canadian economy, what you see is that those hard-hit sectors, employment is down sharply. Exports in those hard-hit sectors to the United States down very sharply. But when you look at the rest of the economy, the biggest effect you see is that the uncertainty around tariffs is really holding back business investment. And you can understand that. If you're a business, you're considering making a large investment, you want to know what the trade relationship is with the United States. You want to know how accessible the U.S. market is, what the pricing is going to look like. That's also spilling to some degree into hiring. We've actually seen some improvement in employment in recent months, but when we talk to companies, what we hear is that they're being cautious about their hiring. So I do think this uncertainty is having an impact on the Canadian economy, and clearing that uncertainty will be helpful for businesses to get on and invest and hire people.
Next on my list, I have Paul Vieira from the Wall Street Journal. Then we'll go to Mark Rendell from the Globe and Mail, and then we'll conclude with Jordan Gowling from the Financial Post. So go ahead, Paul. Paul Vieira? Okay, maybe we'll move on to Mark then, and then Paul, when you come back online, let us know.
Hi, Governor. Mark Rendell here with the Globe. I have a question about stable coins, which was the subject of quite a bit in the speech today. I'm wondering, at a very high level, how much do you think stable coins stand to kind of change the global money system when you're, looking forward for the next couple of years? And how are you thinking about issues around, financial stability, credit creation, even the transmission of monetary policy, if there is a meaningful increase in stable coin adoption?
Mark, I think you raise a good question. Look, it's fair to say the Genius Act in the United States has created a lot more interest in the use of stablecoins as payments, in payments. I mean, so far, stablecoins, most of the use of stablecoins has been what you might call an on and off ramp between different cryptos. So, people who are interested in trading different cryptos use stablecoins as their on and off ramp. They go out of one, they go into stablecoin for a while, they go into another one. So far there hasn't been a big use in what I would call everyday purchases. But the Genius Act in the U.S. does lay out a framework that has created much more enthusiasm for that possibility. I think everybody's talking about, okay, so what exactly are the use cases? Where would a stablecoin have an advantage? We know that cross-currency, if you've tried to send money to somebody in another country, you've probably realized it's expensive, it takes time, it's clunky. Stablecoins certainly provide potentially a faster, cheaper, more convenient way for cross-border transactions. Stablecoins, right now, without real-time rail, we don't have 24/7 settlement. Stablecoins offer 24/7 settlement. With real-time rail, that will also provide 24/7, 365 days a year settlement. I think there is a lot of discussion about what are the use cases. I think one thing is a little, harder to know is, could stablecoins be facilitate different services in a kind of DeFi world? Could they be the foundation for new services? So, as I said in my remarks following my speech, it's not really up to the Bank of Canada to, encourage stablecoins or discourage stablecoins. What it is up to the Bank of Canada is to ensure that if Canadian businesses want to use stablecoins, that they are in fact stable. And the government's budget legislation lays out the requirements. The Bank of Canada will be working with the Department of Finance over the course of next year to take that legislation and put it into regulation, and then the Bank of Canada will begin supervising stablecoins. That's both reflected in the Stablecoins Act, and there will also be some revisions to the Retail Payments Act, so that these things are working together. Did that answer your question, Mark?
It did largely, except I was also interested. The idea of proliferation of private money does raise questions, not just around financial stability, but obviously credit creation. If people are storing money in stable coins rather than bank deposits, which obviously has an impact on your guys' monetary policy transmission. So I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll comment briefly. I think the immediate issue with stablecoins is that a number of jurisdictions, most major jurisdictions, are in the process of either drawing up their legislation or drawing up the regulations to enable their legislation for stablecoins. And one thing that is going to be important is that there is a high degree of consistency across major jurisdictions, because what you wouldn't want is stablecoins issued in one place to all get redeemed in another place as some sort of arbitrage strategy. Stablecoins should be used. Stablecoins are there to be used as a means of payment. That's what they should be used for. So, I think that's the immediate priority, and the Financial Stability Board has agreed. We're all members of the Financial Stability Board. We've agreed on some broad principles on how to do that, and I think the implementation of that effectively over the next year is going to be the immediate priority. There are some, as you mentioned, there are some broader financial stability issues with stablecoins. These are new innovative kind of money. They potentially have benefits, but they also bring some risks. A run, just like there could be a run on a bank, which, or like a run on deposits, there could be a run on a stable coin. That's why, in the design, it's going to be very important that they're backed one for one with high quality liquid assets, so that there are not questions about the convertibility back to cash, and that people are, if everybody's confident that they're convertible back to cash, that will reduce the risks of runs. So yes, there are some important financial stability issues there, and it's important that we really think those through in this design phase.
Okay, and our last question will go to Jordan.
Hi, Governor. In your speech today, you said ongoing structural changes are turning into headwinds that have the potential to disrupt supply and add inflationary pressures. Can you unpack what you mean by that? Are you talking about U.S. tariffs on global supply chains or other forces as well?
Yes, I'm talking about all those things. What are some of these structural headwinds? Certainly, U.S. tariffs are an important one, but even before U.S. tariffs, it wasn't as if the U.S. trade, the global trading system was working perfectly. We were seeing more fragmentation in the trade system. More barriers to trade were starting to emerge. So certainly that is one. To be frank, the world's become a more hostile place. Russia is still attacking Ukraine. There are some other geopolitical tensions that could flare up. This fragmentation of the world means that businesses need to think about more than just the pure efficiency of their supply chains. They need to think about the security of their supply chains. Climate change is creating more extreme weather events. Those can also disrupt supply chains. So, these things all have the potential to create more shocks, and while they aren't all in the same direction, you do worry that more of them are adding costs than cutting costs. I mean, there are, the other big structural development obviously is artificial intelligence. There, actually, while it could certainly be disruptive through the transition, the medium term at least could increase productivity and tend to put some downward pressure on inflation. Having said that, there is an adjustment period, and right now we're seeing AI create a lot of demand for electricity. There's a lot of building going on of new data centers. That's creating some new bottlenecks, some new demands. So, I think that the message there was, we're living in a world probably with more structural change, more supply shocks. It's a more complicated world than at least than the pre-COVID world. And, we need to be assured that, we've got the playbook, we've got the how we implement our monetary policy framework is ready and well prepared for that world.
All right, that concludes today's press conference. Thank you, Governor, and all of you for joining us. Merci et bonne journée.
Merci beaucoup et bonne fin de l'année.
Happy holidays, Governor.